All right. Hey, YouTube, I'm Lucky, and welcome to the Trials Meta Report. This is a long, ongoing series I've been doing where I break down the data from the API using Destiny Trials Report to go over what is the meta inside Destiny 2, because things are always shifting. Things are always changing. New weapons are being brought by Xur. Things are being buffed. Things are being nerfed. And this week's episode is a special Bungie nerf episode because last week in the TWAB, we got a big list of things that are going to be changing in the sandbox and the Witch Queen, and 5 out of the top 10 weapons from last weekend in Trials are getting nerfed in the Witch Queen. Now, before I pull up the list, I want you to comment down below. What weapon do you think was the #1 most used weapon last weekend in Trials on the map Bannerfall? Comment it down below to see if your prediction is right. Here we go, pulling it up. This is the list of the top 10 weapons. We have the Dead Man's Tale pulling in an impressive 1.9 million kills, almost doubling the #2 weapon right there. That's pretty crazy. The Dead Man's Tale, so nasty, so lethal, and it's not specific to any particular input device. It was previously more dominated with mouse and keyboard, but then Bungie was like, hey, you know what? Let's buff it for controller. And so now controller players, mouse and keyboard players are all enjoying the benefits of this absolutely insane weapon. I mean, it shoots across the map. You don't have to ADS with it. You can. It's very effective ADSing, but you don't have to, and that's why it's so good. You can keep that radar. You can see when someone's pushing you, flanking you, whatever it may be. And it's just amazing for team shots overall. And it's a big map. Bannerfall is a big map, so shooting a scout rifle is really, really nice. So the Dead Man's Tale brings it in the #1 spot, and Xur's main ingredient, and the Dead Man's Tale is getting nerfed, so keep that in mind. Bungie did announce that the Dead Man's Tale will be getting a nerf. Its RPM will be changing from its hipfire, so it won't be firing quite as fast hipfire, which is a good change overall. Now, #2 weapon, the main ingredient, is also getting a nerf. They specifically talked about this weapon and the perk, Tap the Trigger, being adjusted in the Witch Queen for fusion rifles because it gives it too much stability. It basically just compresses the bolts together, turning it to an absolute laser gun that just maps people. And it's the main ingredient, not the weapon itself, but the perk, Tap the Trigger, is getting nerfed, is getting adjusted. And so I made a video talking about this and saying how probably the meta shift will go towards Xur's Timeline Vertex, which has firmly planted. Now, you do have to be crouched for this to matter. So that's why you do a lot of, you slide around the corner with the fusion, you start charging it up while you're mid-slide, and then you absolutely map people. If you didn't watch my video on that, make sure to check that out. It was a pretty good video. I showed how effective this Timelines Vertex is in Trials. It was so good, and I really think that the Timelines Vertex will probably hit the top 10 in Witch Queen because it's a great substitute for the main ingredient. After Tap the Trigger gets nerfed and everyone's like, hey, this thing's not as good as it was, everyone will be like, oh, firmly planted on the Timelines Vertex is just as good, if not better, technically, with its stability increase. So that is #2 is getting nerfed as well. #1 getting nerfed, #2, and the #3, the Chaperone. Such a nasty weapon, okay? The range on this thing, the body shot damage this thing does. Who decided to let this thing do so much body shot damage? I mean, if you just shoot someone twice in the body, it's pretty fast and extremely lethal at very far ranges. So the Chaperone getting an appropriate nerf. I believe that the nerf and adjustment that Bungie talked about was a range nerf. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments below, but I believe it's getting a range nerf coming in the Witch Queen. Moving on to the #4 weapon, the Messenger. Now, again, a big map. If you're not wanting to rock the Dead Man's Tale, the Messenger, a great substitute, especially when you get that Desperado procced. And the Messenger is not getting a nerf in the Witch Queen, so keep that in mind. If you like the Messenger, it's still going to remain in the top 10, still going to remain a beast. No news of a Messenger nerf coming in the Witch Queen. Desperado is a really strong perk, and it's staying that way. Moving on to the #5 weapon, they have the IS Luna, 140 RPM hand cannon. We see these things dominate the top 10 list over and over and over again. No surprises to see it not only in the top 10, but in the top 5, the IS Luna. And #6 is the Felwinter's Lie, which is getting another nerf, a very specific targeted nerf to the Felwinter's Lie from Bungie, mentioned in the TWAB. So the Felwinters will probably drop by the wayside. They said, the Felwinter, it's had its time in the sun. It's time for the Felwinter to escape the meta, escape the top 10. And so #6 this weekend was the Felwinter's Lie. Come the Witch Queen, though, I think we'll see this weapon fall much lower on the charts than that. The #7 weapon right here is the Palindrome. Again, another 140 RPM, but this time it's in the energy slot. A weapon you could pair very easily with the Chaperone. Probably most people rocking the Chaperone are running around with the Palindrome. The two pair together extremely well. Palindrome, such a strong weapon, such good base stats, excellent perks, rolls you can get on it. And many of you have already farmed the Nightfall. And in this case, this is the Palindrome Adept, so this would be the Grandmaster version. And you've already gotten that god roll of it. Moving on to the next one, we have the #8 spot goes to the Lawrence Driver. Now, this thing is an absolute plague. I mean, I would say at least 50% of the losses that I got last weekend in Trials were from people using Lawrence Driver. I mean, it's like impossible to stop people right now. And Bungie is nerfing it. Bungie, this is one of the weapons that Bungie is nerfing. They're going to add a bunch of flinch to it, which is nice because I actually used it for a short bit. I was like, you know what, let's just see how crazy this is. I played for like 2 games with it, and I noticed that even though I was like way off target and I was getting flinched, it didn't matter. People just died. And so Lawrence Driver is ridiculously OP, and I was using mouse and keyboard. I wasn't even using controller, and I've heard that it's especially sticky with controller. So Lawrence Driver getting that nerf by Bungie, and appropriately so. I don't think anyone's going to cry about that, but it is kind of fun seeing, you know, a linear fusion, you know, in the top 10. I mean, and we do have a pretty decently diverse top 10 if you think about it, right? We've got number 1 is a scout rifle. What? That's crazy. Number 2 is a fusion. Number 3 is a slug shotgun. Number 4 is a pulse rifle. Number 5 is a hand cannon. Number 6 is a pellet shotgun. I mean, in the top 6 alone, those are all different weapon archetypes. They're all different. And then finally at number 7, we get the repeat. We get a 140 RPM. And then we get a linear fusion rifle. And then we get the last word, which is called a hand cannon. But let's be honest, this thing is a machine gun. I mean, the TTK on this thing is absolutely nuts. If you're rocking this with controller, it's super lethal. Its usage isn't as high because it's not as good on mouse and keyboard. It used to be really good. If you remember my old videos back in the day, he teabagged the wrong guy. Remember that one? It used to be so good on mouse and keyboard, but it got nerfed and adjusted and then got buffed for controller. And Bungie has mentioned this many times that they can adjust so many little values behind the scenes. Like, I don't know, the words they're using are cone, scalar. I don't know what it is. You know, it's a bunch of crazy science, you know? But they can adjust all these things behind the scenes and make weapons god tier for one input device and average for the other. And they have definitely done so for the last word, because it is painfully average on mouse and keyboard. You're sitting out there shooting it and it's just not, the bullets aren't hitting, but you plug in the controller and suddenly this thing is an absolute beast. The number 10 spot, which is nice to see. I'm happy about it. The number 10 spot goes to the 1,000-yard stare. A sniper rifle, finally hitting the top 10. It's because it's a big map though, let's be honest, but sniping has really fallen out of popularity, which is kind of hilarious because I made a post talking about this, how snipers were like always, there was like 3 snipers in the top 10 every weekend during the cheater trials era when everyone was like like there was so much cheaters and so much cheating, the cheating epidemic, aimbot and wall hacks and all that, right? We remember all those videos. And there's like 2 or 3 snipers in the top 10 every single weekend. And I was like, man, it's crazy how everyone is just so good at sniping all of a sudden. What happened? And now, after Battle Eye gets implemented, no one's sniping, you know? Like, and so for the first weekend, in many weekends now, we finally see a sniper hit the top 10. And it's that 1,000-yard stare. That thing is nasty, okay? Don't laugh at the 1,000-yard stare. It is a very, very good, very strong sniper. And the god roll of that is definitely worth using inside Destiny 2 PvP and on Bannerfall on a big map. So that's going to be the Trials meta report. The 5 weapons being nerfed are the Dead Man's Tale, the main ingredient, the Chaperone, the Fellwinter's Lie, and the Lawrence Driver are all getting hard nerfed. Do you think any other of these weapons should get nerfed? Do you think maybe the Messenger, IS Luna, Palindrome, the Last Word, 1,000-yard stare? Do you think any of these should be getting nerfed? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, and make sure to subscribe with notifications on. I'll keep you up to date on all of the meta from now until the end of this season and in the Witch Queen and beyond. I promise. I love this series. It's one of my favorites. I love looking at the data. I love looking at the info and determining what the meta is inside Destiny 2 PvP. That's a wrap on this video, though. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Later.